right, welcome to another wonderful episode of Repair Shop Reckoning, The Race to Zero. Today, I have Shane Merrim, a childhood friend, so this is going to be an interesting one. Welcome, Shane.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start at the very beginning, 1985-ish. I think that's when we kind of decided we met.
I have no idea.
Yeah, see?
I just remember you were on fire.
Yeah, I remember that. So let's start with that story, and then we'll go through your childhood, kind of touch on my childhood. Everybody already heard my story, and then just kind of go from there where we ended up today.
So the farm you worked at was the son of my dad's best friend. So my dad decided it was time I could get a job at a farm. So he was taking me over there to check things out. And as I roll up, you're walking up to the driveway with smoke rolling off your jeans, big holes in them. And about 5 minutes beforehand, you were on a motorcycle that literally caught fire. And you jumped off, rolled around, and you and I took the tractor and picked it up with the bucket. And it was just done burning in the field. And the carburetor was a puddle of metal in the dirt. That was my first recollection when we first met.
I remember, Tommy's like, this is Shane, take him under your wing, show him the ropes.
The second we hit the ground, we were out there picking that bike up off there, and like I said, you were smoldering.
Yeah, we dumped it in the dumpster. And then we quickly became really good friends, all through our childhood.
Oh, yeah.
So we did a lot of crazy shit, and you were always obviously the better student in school, or put it this way, you acted like you were. You were always...
Well, you know why, right? Did I ever tell you why I was good in school?
Because your dad would have kicked your
ass.
My
dad beat my ass.
Yeah,
In elementary school, you have ones and twos and all these weird S's for satisfactory, right? That's what they did. So I did okay in elementary school, but I didn't know what any of that meant. So I went to middle school, and in my first progress report, I had like 3 E's because I was just having a ball not doing my homework. And when I went home, he picked me up and had a discussion with me against the wall about how it is unacceptable. I basically got my ass whipped for about 20 minutes, and I never, ever, ever failed another class. I didn't take an elective. I took every class I could to get through high school and made sure I did good in every single class, and I graduated early. And that was because of my fear of getting a bad grade.
And that kind of goes to the point where we were talking about your kids. A lot of people nowadays believe that their kids, they need to be their kid's friend. I believe that I'm the guy to make my kid to get ready so when I die, he can go on with life, as you are. You're 100%. The same way with your kid, right? Yeah. And let me just brief back up here. Your dad scared the shit out of me. Your dad slapped me 2 times. Once when I was probably, before I even drove.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well,
and
like
probably
15,
when
16.
I was like 17 or 18, he slapped the shit out of me. I got in my car, I'm like ready to cry, like, fuck, I just slapped the shit out of me.
He didn't give a shit.
No, he didn't.
They told you to go tell your dad he slapped the shit out of you,
right?
Yeah,
he was just like that guy. He didn't care. He's like a little... He was like a little cinder block with arms. He was like just a muscular little guy that would slap the shit out of you.
He was ironic because he was one of the nicest humans on the planet and one of the most scariest motherfuckers you've ever met in your life, especially if you crossed him. So it was a very interesting person. Hard to explain.
He would do anything for you.
Yeah.
Like you said, he was the nicest guy, but if you didn't like what he had to say, he's like, I'm going to slap you. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to slap me.
And he could lift a house. He wasn't even that big, but his strength, the size ratio was insane.
Do you remember that time like that Dan guy was living there and we were sitting at the kitchen table and you were showing me that you would put flour around a candle and you blow on it. Remember it would combust?
Right.
And somebody started arguing and your dad told me to shut up. I said something else. He slapped the shit.
Well, you thought he was kidding.
Right. He's like, shut up. Don't say another word. I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Oh my God.
Yeah, he was something else. I seen him getting a lot of fights where he should have been beat up by 2 or 3 guys, and he always seemed to come out on top. It was nuts.
Yeah, it was just mindset.
Yes.
Mindset and strong.
Yeah, like a pit bull. Like imagine a pit bull. That was the paradigm.
Yeah.
He just seemed to always...
Well, when they grew up in that era, like you fought.
Yeah.
And that's what so you got good at it, obviously, or you got your ass kicked all the time, right?
Yeah, it was definitely a game in Detroit when they were out there on the streets, for sure. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't get... I always said I was not tough like my dad in that way. I was... tough in a different way, but the way those guys grew up, I just couldn't imagine.
No, I would agree with that. Worried about getting stabbed and all kinds of shit. My dad talks about that too, growing up. And he was walking through the park with a girl or my mom or something. They're like, hey, nice coat. He's like, why don't you take it? You think you're going to take it? He like, they took it. They beat the shit out of me and took it. He's like, then the Purple Gang found out that they messed with me. They went down and wrecked the drugstore where these other gangs.
Right.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
So
you gotta know
anyway,
that stuff.
so going forward, you go through high school. I know there's a whole. You lost your dad when you're in high school.
Yeah,
Or your dad
just
was
before I turned 18.
just before you turned 18. So that was tough. You're on all of a sudden you're in the world with you have family obviously, but for the most part you're in the world. Like you got to make this shit
Only
happen.
child, yeah. And my mom and I didn't get along, so when he died, we were done. So it was just me,
Right.
which is fine. It turned out okay.
Yeah, I'd say. So let's talk about all that stuff. What you did after school and how you got into the computer stuff and.
So there was a couple topics we discussed. The very first job I had before I was 18 was working with Murray's Car Audio. This is before my dad died. His name was Brian Murray, one of my best mentors. Okay, and he hired me because of my name. I walked in all nervous, a big mess, and he liked my name. And he says, I only hire people. There's another guy who worked there that his name was Monaco. Remember that?
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but he hired that guy on his name too. And the guy was kind of a genius. He was kind of a pussy, but as far as technical goes, he was a genius. Right?
I remember.
I made the guy cry a lot, but he was actually really
He
good
had
at
that
his job.
Black Escort GT.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
So, but he taught me a lot about sales, about people, I actually learned to hate retail, by the way, because of that. Because when you're in retail long enough, you tend to not like people. It's like you got to understand why cops aren't nice, because they see the public so much and they're just such a tool half the time. Same with sales in the public retail arena. You get a lot of that in your truck business. But I learned how to, he taught me that the customer's not always right, but how to handle that. He taught me to sell intangibles, which I think is one of the most incredible things that you can do. Is it's one thing to sell something, yeah, this is worth it, this is shiny, this has got this value, but to sell something that's not there yet, a house, an audio system, a software product, something that you're going to build from scratch, it's really hard to do. So he was my mentor in that. So that's kind of where I was at that. And then later, when my dad died, just before he died, my first job was in IT.
Yep, I remember that. So that was one thing I remember you telling me. I was like, how's the sales going? You're like, it's almost impossible to sell something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And we're talking about websites.
Yeah.
Okay, the World Wide Web was just get started. If you remember correctly, we used to jump down off your roof and plug the phone line from your computer into the neighbor's thing, and you'd be like, I'm going to download this naked picture. And it would take like 45 minutes line by line.
Pixel by pixel,
Just see Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah.
You remember that? So
I do.
you were on the World Wide Web before most people even knew the World Wide Web.
Listen, I was selling websites. So to progress from that, I worked for this company for a while, did really well, but I decided to open up my own business, okay? And it was going to be a computer business. And then part of that was websites. So we got into websites. So I was selling websites back when the number one sales objection was internet. That's just a fad. That's going away. Like there was no concept of putting a credit card out there. It was just selling a web page, and people thought it was a joke and it was going away. Like it was just never going to happen. That's how long ago I started selling websites.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember because like I don't. Now you can correct me. The World Wide Web. We weren't going on the World Wide Web when we were downloading them.
No,
pictures.
that was like CompuServe. That was kind of a precursor. Well, it was around then, but it wasn't used the way it was.
Okay.
It was like CompuServe and like bulletin boards, they called it.
So
Yeah.
when did Website Forge, your website company, start? Actually, your first one was Magnus Software, right?
Right.
So when did that form, and how did that all come about?
So I'll be really quick about this. You got to know the full progression. So I opened that computer company, and my cousin Eric had just broken his back. So I taught him.
I
from
remember
zero.
that.
He was a construction guy.
We went to the hospital. We went in
That's
there.
right.
His feet were.
Yeah, and he was screaming out of pain, and
Oh,
they were
yeah.
feeding him with morphine.
Yeah.
And, yeah, broke his back in 5 places. Whole story. Shouldn't be walking. The guy's remarkable. He's still very productive. I could do a whole podcast on Eric. And
Maybe we should have him on.
you should. His story is amazing.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
inspiring because he's still a impartial paraplegic.
I talked to him
but-
still. He stops by and I
Yeah.
see him. I still get along with him great. I mean, we rode Trail 70s together, for God's sake.
That's right. In my training with him, he's the only guy without a degree that ended up being an IBM contractor for software. One of the top guys in one of their deployment areas without a degree because of the training that I gave him, and he moved on to IBM out in Colorado. So he's got a very successful guy. But getting back to that, I was really good at selling. My first year selling hardware, I sold like $300,000 worth of hardware. I was like 18, 19, well, I think I was like 19, 20 years old, something like that. And I sold great. Problem I didn't understand was collections. I didn't understand that there was a whole science behind collecting money from customers. And these guys would totally, screw you over, So I end up bankrupting that company. And when I bankrupted that company, when I figured this out, I said, okay, I said, I'm done. I'm out of business. I paid all my vendors. I paid somehow. There was one vendor I owed like 80 grand to. So I came to the vendor and said, listen, I messed up. I'm out of business. I go, but I want to pay you. I'm not going to screw you. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep the customers that always paid me. I'm going to show up. I'm going to give them net 1 day terms. So I go there, look at your computer. You want 8 megs of RAM. At the time, it was like $50 a meg, right? Okay, here's what you need. I'll give you a great price on the memory. So I'd call up my vendor, the same guy, and say, listen, I need 8 megs of RAM. Okay, they cost you $50 each. They're $65 each, which was still a good price for you. Do you want it? Yes. Only thing is you got to pay when I install it because I'm getting you this good deal, right? Oh, okay. And then, so I'd go there, get the parts, install them, and then when the guy's not there and the girl at the desk says, oh, I don't have a check. Whoa. Boss said he's going to pay, so I need a check. Suddenly they find the check. And while you're at it, I was here 4 hours times $60 an hour. I need an extra $240 for my labor. In 8 months, I paid off that vendor and put like $100,000 in my pocket. Once I learned how to sell properly, how to collect money, and I did that with a fraction of the customers. All right. So that was one thing that I did immediately after failing. And I felt like a failure. Nobody realizes how bad it feels when you tank a company. Like you feel so personal about it your first time. Right. And that was the progression to that. And so you were talking, so to the website. So when I did that, this is when the web started becoming more popular. So we started doing web stuff, and I realized instead of going to all these people's places and trying to fix stuff for money and hiring people, with the web, everything was done on my server, and they could look at it from where they're at. So I could do way more work for way more customers in one room. And if there's 3 of us in that one room, we're all as smart as the smartest guy in the room, right? So I figured out how to give better service, a good product, and not have to leave my office. And again, you didn't have to hope your smart guy was out at your best customer, and they'd try to call. We'd have cell phones weren't great back then, remember? Okay, not like today. So now you're all in the same room learning from each other, and so that knowledge and the ability to take care of the customer got way better. So I went right to software on that, and web software at that, because it deployed right from the server. So that's how I got into the software.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, when did Website Forge launch? Because
Well, Magnus was first, and that was 95, 6.
Okay, yep.
And then Website Forge, I think, was either 99 or 2000. And that's when I got my other really big wake-up call. Do you want to hear a little like?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out. I think I was one of the first websites on Website Forge for Garrett Auto and Truck was.
Oh, absolutely.
Chris Strail got me hooked up.
And back then, all it did is let you. I was one of the first people that had a web builder. Now you go to GoDaddy or Shopify and you build the whole thing. I was one of the first people ever.
Yeah, because I remember one of the things we were talking about. That's when like Yahoo and all these web pages had all that malware on and all kinds of stuff going on, and you were going to be completely secure and clean.
Yeah. When it was open source and people were hacking the open source, so we kept it closed. Absolutely. And so at the time, it was a simple shopping cart in a web page, but it was a builder. And because I was doing a bunch of websites before the big .bomb just to kind of tell you how we got there. And we were doing stuff for Ford and GM and the government, but I was charging $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a website. We did like $800,000 that year with 2 guys at a desk, again doing web work. But the .bomb happened, scared everyone. So then all my web work kind of went away, and I'm like, I'm not going to be vested in only 5 or 10 companies again. I'm going to have thousands of customers, even if they pay less. And that's where my idea for just the quick web builders for a lower cost, more customers. Like now if I lose 10% of my customers, I still have money.
Yep.
That was my thought process back then. The mistake I made is I didn't make it super cheap and keep it super simple. I always worked to get it better and stronger and go for the bigger companies, but you have a smaller demographic when it costs more. You know what I mean? When it has more features.
Yep.
So we kind of got caught in that trap. We had so many features that certain customers needed, certain customers didn't. And so it was kind of interesting how GoDaddy took off at the $20 builder, and we were at a different price point. But it all averaged out at this point. So
let's go back to sales. So your dad passes away. You're just now getting out of high school. You're looking at your house, and your house was half done because of the catastrophe when he put the addition on. It rained for 2 weeks. Remember that?
Right. Yeah, it was another podcast.
You remember that.
Yeah.
You had to feed yourself.
Yeah.
We know you didn't have $100,000 sitting in the bank and life insurance policy of $2 million, right?
Right.
You had to either swim or drown.
Yeah.
So you had to go and sell. You were talking about that earlier. You were driving down the street. knocking on doors.
First sales experience was literally by fire. I'd go down the street. My road was Haas Road. I don't want to spend a lot of money, so I drove to the end, and I went business to business. This is in the country. This isn't Wixom when it wasn't stacked up.
Wasn't Wixom, right?
Yeah, it was a business every half mile, not every walking distance apart, right? And I got destroyed. I had to eat. I had no food. I had nothing. And I just kept saying, no, they'd look at me and tell me no. They would wave me off before I'd come in the door. It was horrible. And I finally figured out kind of the approach. And again, the net answer is nobody gives a fuck about you or who you are, why you're there. Really, in an instant, you have to determine whether or not you have something for that person. Do I have something for you or not? It's all about what you need. It has nothing to do with me, who I am, why I'm here. So I would finally walk in, and I think I did it just I was just depressed at one point. And I just walked in and said, hey, I just have one question. Who fixes your computers when they break? Put my head down thinking I'm going to get kicked out. Oh, well, actually, we don't have anybody. And right now, this printer won't talk to my computer. Great. I can fix that. Made some money. And next thing you know, I would just walk in and say, listen, really easy. Who fixes your computers? Whether they had somebody or not, it seemed like everybody had something broken at the moment. And it was Windows. Windows sucks
right.
anyways.
Yeah,
but then it really, oh yeah. Like I remember 2.11 where Windows was basically a big black cursor. It wasn't even, very graphic. And so I'd, for a week, finally go down the street when I learned how to sell. And in a week's worth of knocking on doors, I get about a month's worth of business. And that was my very first exposure to real sales. But I did it to eat. No one taught me classically. Now, I did later read some books and learn some concepts, but it was a very humbling experience.
Yeah, but you did it.
I did it.
Yeah. That speaks volumes. I mean, nowadays, I guess when I look back at how we came up and stuff like that, I came up obviously in a different way, but you couldn't do the things we did now.
Oh, no.
You can you imagine walking in and knock, hey, can I look at your computer? Like, well, who are you? Like, we're not you because the viruses and all that stuff.
Everything's changed
so much. And, you went from selling computers and then selling websites that didn't even exist to doing Magna Software, which is still in business.
Oh, yeah.
And then going to Website Forge, building a whole platform.
Right.
And you beat all the big guys. So
right.
that just goes to show you a mindset already. I don't want to sit there and toot your horn, but how
do
far ahead
do you remember
curve.
what my house was like that winter?
No heat?
Yeah, I had no heat, and I wouldn't tell anybody. So I was running these little electric fans under the house. House wasn't very well insulated because my dad had it all tore apart when he died. And it was just enough to try to not have the pipes freeze, and they did sometimes. So I was having plumbers fix them. But I was taking showers in 25, 30 degree, it's probably 30, just over freezing. So 32, 33. It was freezing. And then my grandma found out. Do you know how it got solved? Somebody ratted me out and told my grandma, who I never saw. I did. I'd go see her, but she would never come to my house.
Hasina,
yeah. Little, it was like little Yoda, right? And she showed up and made me take the money because it was a boiler system that was too expensive to fix, so it had to be replumbed. That's why I couldn't fix it. I had to put ductwork everywhere, and I just didn't have the money. And she made me take the money, and it got fixed towards spring. But that was the...
Yeah, because your dad had all his sheet metal bending stuff in there. I remember all that I remember all that.
I was 10 years old. I used to cut with a torch and arc weld. My dad taught me all that
I remember all that stuff. We put a transmission in Mike's car in your garage or a clutch at Yugo.
Yep.
Remember that?
Yep.
We were so proud of ourselves. I was in shop class. We're like, we could do that. Or charge him $200. Back then we're like, we're going to own this fucking town when we get done with this. $200. Do you remember that we were such hustlers? We would go to Big Lots and buy hammers and socks and stuff like that.
We sold so many socks.
And we would go to the bars on 8 Mile and walk into the freaking bars and try to sell people socks and hammers. Do you remember all that shit?
I think they bought them just because they were amused.
Yeah.
I don't even know why they bought them.
Yeah, that was some crazy ass times.
That was your idea. I can't believe we did that. That was funny. I didn't think it was going to work.
No, we were going down into the hood, too.
Yeah,
way down in 8 Mile, and
They're like, what are you white boys doing here?
Yeah. That was kind of crazy, but we've always both had the entrepreneurial spirit, one way or the other. I was kind of the dark horse on the farm. There's this guy's going nowhere quick. He'll be the taxi cab driver.
That's what you want everybody to think, though. I'm going to just break all this up. You used to boo-hoo all that bullshit to me, and I said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not stupid. In fact, you just don't want to do anything. Like
When it came to school,
he was in
absolutely.
No, he put himself in sped class. So he didn't have to work. You just didn't want to do the homework. I didn't like homework either. You know. In fact, I passed all my classes not doing anything at home. I just did it all in school, right? But I get it. But you just like, oh, if they're going to give me a nice place to sit and not do anything, and like you just took it.
Absolutely.
Delayed all that mental horsepower for later, I guess.
Yeah, right.
But you worked hard. So like when you were working at the time,
Yeah,
but you just didn't like school.
And I liked diesel mechanics class. I did great.
And that the teacher made the difference for you too.
Yeah,
you could have had 1,000 teachers. Without that teacher, you may not have done anything.
Yeah, that guy just passed away. I'm still friends with his wife on Facebook.
What was his name again?
Roger Enyart.
Enyart. I was going to say Earhart. Enyart. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
you actually came in there, remember, and welded and stuff. He's like, God damn, you know how to weld. Remember all that
Yeah.
shit? So, yeah. So, going on, you did Website Forge and all that stuff. And so, let's keep going. So, what happens after Website Forge? The kids start to be born. And
It's interesting. I actually learned another lesson. So, when my last one was born, as a family, we took martial arts. That's where we got Storm Taekwondo. And we started doing Taekwondo. And I didn't think Lisa would like it. She loved it. So, all the kids got in on it. Well, I have had congenitally bad hips anyways, and they kind of destroyed my hips. So I was making so much money at the time, and the companies were running so well that I had my hips replaced. We spent a lot of time with the kids. I worked from home, so I had the kids. So I had an era where the kids really got our attention. But the problem was, there's that book, Who Moved My Cheese? It's embarrassing to say, but I let a lot of things get ahead of my company, and I didn't improve the website system in that era. So I lost a lot of business because as things were changing, I didn't really keep up with it. Now, I can argue it a couple different ways. I would never give away the time that I spent with the kids. And again, I was making great money at the time, so I could buy whatever I wanted and really have the time with the kids. And I did recover with my hips. But with a little of attention to what was changing, I would have stayed on top. I got to top. I was ahead of everybody else. I was very ambitious, and I got lazy. So there's only way to say it, if I want to be completely honest. But again, reflecting, things happen for a reason. I'm not upset about it. Now the kids are, my youngest is 18. I'm killing. I can do whatever I want. And I love to work. But that's kind of what happened. So we lost some momentum. I got back on the horse then, and we've been building it up ever since. We've got a couple other companies that we did, as a result of the Taekwondo. We sell Taekwondo gear and rent some equipment that's meant for Olympic scoring. Because of that, we started a print shop because you have to print the gear. And then when COVID hit and all the sports went away, we had to turn the print shop kind of into a retail. It wasn't meant to be a retail business. That's why I kind of struggled for 2 years to become self-sustaining, so to speak. So I learned a lot of lessons, and I like it all. And now I'm just about simplifying those businesses to where they just generate money with kind of staying in lanes that are not as, are going to create a bunch of problems.
bunch of employees and stuff. I want to back up to I want to talk about sales again because I don't think most people understand. We talked about this at lunch, how hard sales really are and what an art it is. I could think back, we'll start a little bit here. Garrett Auto and Truck had a company, a fleet come to us called Nabisco. Everybody knows who Nabisco brands are. Oreos, chips, whatever. So I wasn't in charge back then. So Steve decided that we need to put all our eggs in with Nabisco because they have a lot of money. They have a lot of broken trucks. We could do very well. Well, we worked for that company for 2 years. Well, we started ignoring our other customers. We started giving them good treatment, preferential treatment, and working overtime and stuff like that. And then one day, guess what happens? They get a new manager. Hey, we're going another direction. Here we are sitting with no work because we pissed off our other customers. So I'm like, well, how hard can this be? I'm just going to go out and do sales. And what a rude awakening that was, knocking on doors.
Sales is tough.
Well, I wasn't going to fail. So I would literally be like, yeah, I could fix your trailer. Well, when? I'm like, I'll hook it to my truck right now. I would take it back to the shop. And I did sales for 2 years. And there's a lot of, get the fuck out of here. What are you doing here? It's hard.
But tell me it didn't change your understanding of the human mind, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Completely. Once you get how the mind works, whole different game.
Yeah, I could sell stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I'd walk in there, towards the end, I would say stuff like, yeah, hey, I'm here to look at, we sell truck repair. Here's my card. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we don't need truck repair. I'd be like, yeah, it looks like it. I'd be embarrassed if them trucks were mine run up and down the road. They look like shit. They have bald tires. Good luck, buddy. It looks like you're doing a good job. And then hey, wait a minute. And that customer, I'm not going to say who it is still a customer today.
I believe it.
He's like, your balls were so big. He's like, I thought there was a scrape mark because I couldn't believe you said that to me. At first, I wanted to punch you. Then I thought to myself, I looked around, I thought, fucking
Not
A,
wrong.
he's right.
Yeah, he
he's
looks like
right.
shit.
He just like literally put it in my face. And then, there's other companies. There's a company that the second company I got, they're out of business now. It was a plumbing company. And I am doing business for this guy for years. And he dicked me out of $150. And I remember that because he was probably the second or third one I don't remember. He was at the Cody Island probably about a year ago. And I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing? He's like, good. His tab was laying there with a $50 bill. I walked over, grabbed the $50 bill. I said, no, you owe me a fucking 100. Walk out of the restaurant. And the owner's like, dude, that was so gangster. The Coney Island, he's like, I could not believe you did that to him. I'm like, yo, he still owes me. I went over to fix his truck.
He knows.
In his parking lot. He's over there going, what?
He knows.
But I remember, like, the sales stuff was hard. I remember days upon days. It's not like I had to feed my family like you did. So, but it was a pride thing with me. You know me. I'm like you.
Yeah.
We start something, we're going 110 miles. We're not failing at it.
Yeah, that's the one thing is I was printing shirts one time with this new machine. My son was like this big, and I'm messing him up, and he just goes, "Why don't you quit, Dad? Like you can't get one right." He looked right at me. He said, "Your son," and I said, "Son, I didn't even consider quitting. You understand that quitting wasn't even part of my thought process." I said, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, okay? I said, so I'm going to get it right, and when I get it right, I'm going to be great, and everybody else is going to struggle, and they're going to quit. So I told him, and I'll never forget that. He was like, and I think he took that lesson because he's a very hard worker now, but I was just like, at that point in my life, quitting wasn't even a fleeting thought.
Do you remember what I used to tell all the kids at the Taekwondo school I teach in class? And like, if this was easy, they'd call it soccer. They'd watch all the parents and like, he just dog soccer. I used to say that. You're like, oh.
That's true. Taekwondo is a tough sport.
Yeah.
It's very personal.
Yeah. So, sales definitely, I think it cultivates personality in the salesman too.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with salesmen, they have a lot of, my dad was telling me this when we were on a trip. He's like, we were in the Delta Lounge. He's like, you notice all these salesmen have big red noses? I'm like, what? He's like, look at them. He's like, they have so much time going from sales meeting to sales meeting. They all sit here drinking.
Get smashed, yeah.
He's like, they're all alcoholics.
Right.
He's like, sales is stressful.
It is.
And, we were doing it on a scale this big. Can you imagine doing a presentation with a bunch of bigwigs somewhere? And,
right.
I got called into Ford at one time when I bought, just a side story, I bought an IDM, well, Steve did, off of eBay, and a computer because we were going to save some money not buying the Ford software. We thought we bought it was a VCM, it was IDM 1, and I called tech before I couldn't get it to work. It was bootleg. So I called tech support. They're like, well, bring it down. I'm like, bring it down to Ford and Dearborn? I'm like, wow, these guys are really helpful.
I must have thought you were the criminal.
They did.
Oh, God.
I walk in this room, and all these guys are there, and the cops are there. And I'm like, what's up? I'm here with my broken shit. They're like, yeah, let me see that. And they look, they come back, no, it's a bootleg. Are you making this? And they gave me the whole thing. That was hilarious, but that was fun.
Hey, talk about bootleg. You remember when I made that device that simulated putting quarters into a phone booth?
Oh, yeah. Get refunds.
Yeah.
We put it in, just all the quarters would come out.
Yep.
We were such petty little criminals.
We didn't even do it. We just cool that you could.
Yeah, and then you used to do all that stuff. Like we got the watches that would dial the phone.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, the dialer.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you hit the star button 5 times with a different frequency, it would simulate a quarter. So it would go beep, 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 just like when you drop the quarters and you hear beep, 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 you could simulate that tone in the microphone. So I found some stuff somewhere on how to do that, and we turned the watches into dialers, and we could make calls.
You taught me how to do my first circuit board. We were doing that. We would go to Radio Shack and buy the stuff.
Oh, yeah, the breadboards.
Yeah, and we would etch them and make simple circuits and stuff. And remember, my fuzzbuster broke, and this speaker went out. We went to Radio Shack, took the fuzzbuster apart, ran the wires out,
in there,
soldered it back in, had a big speaker on top of it.
I love that stuff. I did that always when I was a kid.
Well, that carried on to after trade school. You were able to fix your own gear.
Yeah,
you rent.
Yeah, that's true. We had one Christmas. We were so poor, just me and my dad. The only gift I got was in a bag, a Radio Shack bag, and it was like a 60-in-1 circuit kit. I'll never forget that. So like you realize that, and I felt bad for my dad, so I never said a word, But I sat. That was my toy. I played with that circuit thing every single day. That was before I could drive or do anything. I was just home.
I don't think people really realize where you started from and where you are now. Like your dad would literally, like you on the motorcycle. I remember your dad went and pawned his rings.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a good guy.
Yeah.
He went and pawned his rings to get you that KX85. Remember that?
Yeah, and that was the nicest bike I had. Before that, he couldn't even fit, but like the bike was too big. He had to use have boards to build it up, or there was something wrong with him because he couldn't afford anything good. That green bike was the nicest bike he ever got me. It was the last bike he ever got me.
I remember, and then it got stolen, right?
No, that Indian guy you were talking about blew it up and then hit it or something.
Yeah, something weird like that. Yeah.
My dad had that guy around, but that guy was no good.